The Detroit Pistons have a serious problem as the team continues dropping consecutive games against other Eastern Conference opponents. We get a look at the biggest weakness and the biggest concern moving forward with a Pistons team that's without one of their starters, with no timeline in place, multiple players not stepping up, and one recently signed player that is not carrying his weight within this team's moving forward. We're going to break down everything you need to know and exactly why fans are starting to worry. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching. And if you haven't hit the sub button yet, it's completely free. It helps out a ton. And we're also trying to reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers before the playoffs start. So make sure to go and hit it. It's completely free. And I'll keep you up to date with everything to do around the team. Now, looking at this Pistons team, one of the top teams in the NBA. We know the dominance on what they have done leading up to this recent stretch of games where they've started to struggle. Looking at the Pistons, you still have 2.5 games on the Boston Celtics, 5 above the Knicks. Looking at the standings as a whole, you're not worried about falling out of a playoff spot at this point, 45-18. But when things start to get concerning, even diving into the past couple of games, the games versus the Spurs, against the Nets, and even diving into the one versus the Miami Heat, which I'm not going to go into too much, but this is a team that is dropping games that they should have to go out and win. Cade Cunningham, of course, putting the team on his back. But diving into the numbers, looking at the starters, Cade Cunningham, minus 16, of course, 26-10, a very good game. Diving farther down, Jalen Duren, 24 and only 5 rebounds, a minus as well. Tobias Harris, also Duncan Robinson. When looking at the guys, Kevin Huerter, 0 for 4, from 3 once again. This is a team that is continuing struggling. The biggest thing is, and listen, it's a broken clock, continuing to talk about it, this is a team that is struggling from 3. I mean, looking at some of the guys, yes, Cade shot incredible, 6 for 9 from 3-point and going 9 for 18 from the field, but even going farther down, 0 for 2 from Tobias Harris, 1 for 7 for Duncan Robinson, 0 for 4 for Kevin Huerter. This is a team that, of course, with Detroit basketball, is taking it to the paint, the mid-range shots, of course, and Cade Cunningham really working through. But looking at the team and even diving into one of the biggest things where we know Ausar Thompson is without a timeline after getting injured with his ankle versus the San Antonio Spurs, a game that once again they did lose. And going into the Pistons 4-game drought, we can see them drop games versus the Cleveland Cavaliers, missing multiple star players. The San Antonio Spurs continue to haunt this team. The Brooklyn Nets, a game that you shouldn't have lost, and going against Miami once again, 121-110. There's some glaring issues with this team. Now, I do want to touch on Ausar Thompson. Losing this guy for the foreseeable future takes a huge toll on not only his athletic ability, of course, but his defensive ability. A guy that's looking like a legitimate depoy candidate, someone that's going to make a defensive team. Yes, the shooting isn't the best. 3-point percentage, 27, 52 from the field. True shooting a little low as well. But we know the big thing with Ausar Thompson is looking at the defense. The offensive rating, very good, 88th percentile, ranked in the top 70 across the NBA. Looking at the defensive rating, 81st percentile, top 19 across the entire NBA. Rebounding, very good. But again, losing to Ausar Thompson, you lose a big part of that depth starting through on that top line. And looking at this as well, of course, Caris LeVert has not been what we expected joining this organization. Dinesh Jenkins, who I'm going to touch on very soon, has been struggling mightily since signing that extension or signing into a one-way contract. And looking at the guys, Kevin Huerter, who's supposed to come in and help us be that second Duncan Robinson off the bench to help with the shooting. But looking at the team as a whole, this is a team that has started to crumble. And I don't want to say crumble. We know they're still top of the Eastern Conference. They're still a very good basketball team. But with this, Dinesh Jenkins, since signed his 2-year, $8 million contract, just under 5 points, 1 assist, 28 from the field, and 17 from 3. Now, this was stats before going into their last game versus the Miami Heat, of course. But even looking at that game versus Miami, this is a team that has continued to struggle. Looking at Dinesh Jenkins in this game as well, you can work down and see what everyone did throughout this game. But Jenkins, 1 for 4 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, 50%. We love to see it. 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a plus for one of only 5 people that were a plus within this team. It's starting to get worrisome looking at this team And with the lack of shooting, the biggest thing is a secondary ball handler has to be the top priority for this Pistons team going into free agency. You need to focus, of course, Jalen Duren. You need to sign this guy. You need to keep this core, but you need to target zone because the big thing is, and Cade Cunningham, a guy that continues to do everything. And fans, I want you guys down in the comments right now. Let me know. Put Y for yes, N for no. Are you worried about the Pistons? Yes, a 4-game slide isn't the end of the world. It's a team that can continue to build. They can get on the hot streak. We've seen it multiple times this year. Even looking in the entire NBA, this is a team that still is dominant. Looking at the rankings across the NBA, they still sit as the 1 seed with a 71.4% win percentage, but these teams are starting to catch up. The Boston Celtics just 2.5 games behind, technically tied with OKC, but you don't need to worry about them unless they go to the finals with the Pistons. But looking at the teams and the gap getting smaller and smaller between them, I mean, there was a point, we had 7 games on hand on the Boston Celtics, on the New York Knicks. Now, those teams also made the jumps 2.5 and 5, but it does get interesting. I mean, looking at J.B. Bickerstaff speaking on this situation as well, it comes down to our level of respect for the game, period. In the second half, we built a 20-point lead, and then we stopped respecting the game. When you disrespect the game, it's going to bite you, and that's what happened to us tonight. Now, looking at this, of course, you can blame a lot of this on the lack of shooting. Looking across the NBA right now, the Pistons are sitting below or just above teams like the Jazz, Pelicans, Magic, Mavericks. You can work through shooting at 34.6%, which is only 1.2% better than the Sacramento Kings that have Russell Westbrook and Zach LaVine, multiple guys not even playing right now, but a lot of guys that can't shoot. But there is a saving grace. Looking at this, there's guys that need to step up. Ron Holland, a very young piece that's going to be a huge and still is an important piece within this organization. Ron Holland needs to take the next step. The 3-point shooting, 22.9%. Another player, of course, that needs to figure his game out sooner rather than later is, of course, Kevin Huerter, that needs to continue and get better. Kevin Huerter, of course, a player that we picked up at deadline, hopes that would join this team and help with the shooting, is shooting 30% from the field. He was struggling in Chicago, of course, 45% from the field. A secondary ball handler that's not really getting the opportunity to be that secondary ball handler with this organization. Dinesh Jenkins needs to step up once again. It's a lot to ask. A guy joining this team and playing very well, but now the numbers are dropping in a moment where you need that secondary ball handler to really step up. Still very good when it comes to assists, of course, sitting 153rd in the NBA, 74th percentile, and even looking across the league, a guy that does help on the defensive end with a 91% defensive rating, 44th across the NBA. This is the team that needs to figure it out a lot sooner rather than later. But let me know, are you not worried about this team? Is this one of those slides that maybe they get their butts in gear, lack of better words, going into this next stretch of games, going into the playoffs? Or is this something that's been building all season and is now catching up to the team? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments because I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this team. But I've been your host, Mark Pye. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for the lack of videos over the past. I do Detroit Red Wings Digest as well. So if you like Detroit hockey, I was covering the entire deadline. That took up a lot of time, but let me know all your thoughts down in the comments because I love reading through them. But I've been your host, Mark, and take care, Pistons fans.